So let's give a nice warm welcome to these guys sharing on a fruit for meat lovers. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Pat.
I hope
today, and welcome to everybody. All right. Before we introduce ourselves to you, I would first like to share the story of Jack.
Mhm.
Jack is a fruit for meat lovers. Once upon a time, Jack overheard a rumor. Many Europeans were struggling to eat less meat. In fact, ridiculous amount of people are reporting that they would actually love to cut down on their meat consumption. But the simple fact is, they love meat and they find it hard to resist meat. Now, you guys might wonder, are there not like millions of meat alternatives out there on the European market already? There are. In fact, you easily see about 2 new meat alternatives being added to the vegan shelves every year. Can they satisfy true meat lovers? Not quite. A lot of meat alternatives out there right now check off a lot of boxes, or at least 3 important boxes for the consumers. They're all convenient products and they're made in an environmental friendly way with no harm to animals. But there is still room for improvement when it comes to the taste, the texture, and the allergens. A lot of these products already on the shelves are based on either soy or legumes, which are known to cause either allergies, or they have a little bit of a scar on their reputation in their attempt to profile themselves as a healthy ingredient. Bottom line, European meat lovers are yet to take a bite into allergen-free product that actually tastes and feels like meat. And here's where Jack comes in. This adventurous fruit has been dreaming of becoming a world star for a while, and having heard these European struggles and rumors, he thought, man, this is my time, this is my moment. So he quickly packed his bags and he headed towards Europe in pursuit of his dreams of becoming a world star. Ready to say 3 things to chefs across Europe. One is, I'm a natural ingredient, unprocessed, no allergens, on top of many health benefits that I have. Second, I'm a true jack of all trades. Me basically tasting like nothing and having no taste, being completely neutral, is actually my secret power, my superpower, because it allows you to turn me into all kinds of favorite meat dishes. And 3, I'm a fruit for meat lovers. Mix me up with the right spices, and you'll have the ability to truly please and amaze meat-loving crowds and give them something to rave about. So at this point, chefs were wondering, so how does one fruit get from the jungle to us? And so here, in a nutshell, you see a little journey that Jack takes from the jungle to the plate. At this point, you might think there have to be more hands and brains working together to making all of this happen. And there are. In fact, any fruit that dreams of becoming a world star needs a little bit of help, and there's one thing they all have, which is a great, amazing team. Some of you might recognize some faces because Me, Jack, as a company was actually born here and constructed, amongst others, on the premises of the bridge. So 3 of them you might recognize, 2 of them are standing in front of you. We still do plan to introduce ourselves in a bit, just bear with me and let me finish the story of Jack. All right. So the whole Me, Jack team stands ready to welcome him upon his arrival in Europe and to turn it into full-time favorite meat dishes. This is how Jack looks like after his transformation. Here you see him ready to impress chefs at restaurants and at food services. And here you see him ready to impress home chefs. We're expecting these 6 products available on shelves of the European supermarket by the end of the year. They will be looking approximately like this. Like that. Overall, Jack's pretty happy about his move to Europe. He's happy to be able to help meat lovers eat less meat. By doing so, he's also helping save trees and plant new ones. Because Jack grows super fast. In fact, he grows in abundance. In Asian jungles, he grows so fast that 1/3 of the fruits usually remains uneaten. This can cause farmers to cut the trees. So eating more jackfruits saves more trees. Jack steps it up a bit by donating part of his earnings to an organization called Just Bigots to plant new trees across region. Now is a story about Jack. He's still not there yet, but he's working really hard on conquering the hearts of meat lovers, and he's building a reputation for himself across Europe as different for meat lovers. If you are curious to learn more about him, you want to keep an eye on Jack, you can befriend him on his socials, maybe even give him a hand, help us spread the word. But there's a new fruit in town.
All right, so a bit about ourselves. As you can tell, that's Maja. She's Jack's brand guardian, pretty much responsible about safeguarding, let's say, the image, the tone of voice, and making sure the rest of the team really sticks to it. She's really good at that. And I'm Ángel. I'm more Jack's team architect, and I take all the ideas that are floating around in the team and try and, let's say, simplify into clear copy, a reasonable financial model, and try and find the different tools to help them all do their jobs faster. But before we joined Jack, we actually partnered up, created a company called Tortuga Solutions, in which we pretty much help companies get their brand marketing foundations in place to help turn products into market hits. Right? Pretty much Maja does the ideas. She's the one that takes, let's say, the product stories and tries to guide the teams into turning it into a brand story. And I take all the, let's say, chaos, craziness that comes out of those discussions and try and simplify it into a message that's easy to communicate across the different channels, the marketing channels. Yeah, so that said about the images. The images went away, but anyway. Anyways, I hope it doesn't influence the other ones, but it's okay. All right, about a year ago, we joined Jack's core team. After helping him a bit with ideas, we ended up joining the core team, and we permanently work with them now part-time. Pretty much part-time with them. On the side, we work usually one more project on the side, and we coach different accelerators and incubators on how to get brand marketing in place. That being said, just to get a sense that we're in the right place, for you guys out there, is anybody actually looking to get a product to market right now? Anybody having a product and market but struggling to make it into a success? Right. And anybody already have products and markets that are already a success? Yeah? All right. And well, for the rest, any other reason why you guys are here? Just to get a sense and shape the story in that direction if I can?
Meet, Chris, and Care, and you?
All right. Well, in any case, I hope we're going to dissect the way we branded Jack, and we kind of hope that the main takeaway is the importance of getting your story straight, right? And then really seeing how getting it straight, it really helps your communication to speed up the way you bring products to market. And well, all brands at the end start with a good story, a story about who you are and what you want to be known for. And there's a quote we really like by David Greer, and that's pretty much, if you don't tell your audience what to talk about, you don't tell them your story, they're going to make up their own. And that might not be what you want to communicate or what you want to be known for. So better to get that right at first, and even though you can't influence it 100%, to get it out and get people talking about it. So just to see more or less if we're on track with Jack, if I were to ask you guys, how would you introduce Jack? Or how would Jack like to be introduced? We would say he would have to be a plant-based ingredient. Anybody? Right?
Yeah.
Raw jackfruit? So you have to choose one.
Oh, just one.
Just one, yes.
Oh, we get
Fruit
one.
for meat lovers.
Oh, yeah, sorry, say.
Anybody would choose anyone else? Another one?
I do E. It's not Jack in the Box, which most people may not know.
Jack of all trades. Could be as well, huh?
Well, it looks like you're pretty much on track with the story, but I'll let you take it.
Thank you. Just in case. All right. So yes, it looks like we are on the good path. The bigger that overlap is, the stronger your brand is. Now, acknowledging that nobody's ever going to be able to remember the whole story you're projecting, you want to make sure that they remember the part that matters to you the most. And you also have to be okay with the fact they're going to construct part of the story that you're not actually communicating. Or at the very least, what you want to do is create an association with your product or with your brand, right? So in eJack, we are saying a lot of things. We're layering our messages, and we know that people have different interpretations beyond what we're actually communicating. But at the very least, we hope that the audience picks up on the association we would like them to have, and that is that eJack is associated with the fruit and meat lovers. So how do you influence people's behavior, right? Simply with marketing. Again, in a simple definition, marketing is an act of memorization. You have to say something over and over if you expect that message to actually be heard. When I introduce Jack to you, I've used the phrase fruit and meat lover at least 5 times, plus in combination with fruit and meat lovers at least 10 more times. You've seen it on the screen prior to this one at least 5 times. Now, there's some studies that say that you have to encounter a message 8 times for your brain to actually register it. And for a message to stand a chance of being picked up by your target audience, it has to be projected to them up to 100 times. Basically, marketing is all about repeating the message that you want people to remember and to share. Right? Now, at this point, please just pause to remember as you are constructing a brand that your brand audience does not equal your paying customers. You have your paying customer service, but your brand audience is much, much bigger. Think about all the family and friends and all the fans of your brand that are perhaps not buying your product, but they can help you. They can act as your ambassador to spread the word, right? You want to make it easy for them to spread the word. Now, at this point, I'm already switching from talking about products to talking about brands. You want to visualize what I mean by that. What do you see on this picture with one word only?
Car.
Expensive.
Expensive.
Trip.
Car.
Elegant.
Traveling.
Traveling.
Elegant.
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 Elegance.
I have no money to buy one of those.
That is more than one word, Carol.
I'm sorry.
It is funny. I think this is the first time nobody serves a Tesla.
Tesla.
Oh.
Because we are in Indonesia, we don't have these cars here.
Most of the answers we get is like, hey, Tesla.
Well, it's also because the entire Bitcoin community, which is all of Bali, is pissed off at him because of him tanking the Bitcoin price. So no, everyone's bitter on Teslas right now.
Now, besides the Bitcoin and the frustration with the guy, do you guys have any association with Tesla?
No.
Well, I do. I'm from California, from that area. So
Just a few words, association. Yeah.
What do you
What
associate
do
it
you
with?
associate it with?
California, Tech, Silicon Valley, Stanford, Austin, Texas,
Energy.
alternative energy, space. So
All right.
Fast, space.
Right.
Yeah. So at the end.
Clean energy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Next round.
Let's try one more. See how this one resonates. What do you see in one word here?
Rolex.
you don't get that one either, Carol. Do you have anything that Carol can get?
Yeah. Anything I can go.
What does Rolex symbolize to you?
For me, probably money, status.
Sounds like
Money, status, success.
Yeah.
You've made it, right? But at the end, it can also be a watch, right?
Yeah,
It's not. It's a Rolex.
it's probably also equally accurate as a 10-year-old boy
yeah.
with few zeros. Or spend on it.
One more. We're not sure.
One more. This is a hard one. Who knows what they're seeing? Ooh,
Milk.
Oakley.
Oh, wow.
There we go.
Oh.
All right. Who? Can I see a hand who
You've
has
never-
no idea what this is?
No idea.
No idea.
Yeah, we thought this brand might not be known here, so that's why we were curious on the thing.
Yeah, so Oatly is taking Europe by storm. This is basically an oat milk tea. but they have pretty much ruined all the other milk alternatives out there single-handedly. Like, people are religiously obsessed with Oatly, and they are the brands that a lot of other brands are either inspired by, like we are, or playing worship at this point, given how well they are doing their branding and marketing.
So they're one of those brands that is now known a lot like a challenging brand, right? And they took actually from back, I think it was the 80s or something, and typical corporate look and feel brand, and they made a switch to be like, oh, we want to be more of a lifestyle brand. And now, so it's huge, at least in Holland, and it's not in the States now.
Oh, huge. They got Snickers to pivot. Snickers has an oat Snickers now, and it sucks. But it's because of these guys.
Yeah. So it's really making an impact and really on simple messaging, and at the end they're an oat milk, but they're really changing the scene.
But it's good.
It's good.
good.
It's also a good product.
It's a good product.
We have seen commercials in Europe at some point of other brands. You see that they're spending money advertising, and you see a lot of comments saying, "Oh, poor brands, they're wasting their money in an effort to imitate."
It's successful because it's off the normal way of.
It's successful due to its very specific, quirky, out there, challenging approach to asking the milk industry to show the numbers and making plain, bold statements that have gotten themselves into a lawsuit that actually helped them grow. It was a very nicely done challenge brand.
When you read their stuff, you really see their tone of voice and their, what might I say, the quirkiness, and it's kind of like, oh, try it. You won't like it the first couple of times, but eventually you'll like it, right? And that kind of messaging style to make it all simple and easy.
And actually, we also have a barista line. So it's the one for cappuccinos and all. And in a lot of the menus that I see in Holland, and even in certain countries, it says oat milk. That's like 35K to use their milk instead of like a normal almond.
Oh, and that's for lattes only.
Yeah.
Same company.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it says Oatly instead of like.
Instead of exactly, and that is exactly, thank you for this bridge, because these, well, especially Oatly, if you know the brand right, but all of these examples, they kind of nicely illustrate one more quote that we really like. When you have the ability to position yourself as a brand, you're not going to. People will create an unreasonable preference for your product, in which price doesn't matter, and you'll easily outcompete all the other products out there, your direct competitors, as example of the one that you just mentioned. I'm looking for it everywhere. I'll ask you for the name of that place. All right. So, how do you actually then build a brand? Is the question, right? Now, we've been at it for over a year with me, Jack. We have learned a lot. We've come to appreciate branding as an ongoing process. Please make no mistake, it has a beginning, it does not have an end. It goes on forever and continuously forever. So here's a bunch of things that we learned. From now on, whenever we step into a new project as Tortuga Solutions and people actually ask us to help develop a brand or set up a marketing funnel, we'll make sure to tell them that yes, we can do it if you have a marketing team to follow up. If there are people that have the time and the budget to actually manage and nurture the brand. If not, there's no point. Our efforts will be lost in vain, right? So we're happy to discuss any of these lessons learned, but we can only focus on one. So for the remaining part of the presentation, Ángel will dive into the one that sticks out for us as something that we see a lot of starting companies where they go wrong, let's say, starting companies go wrong. We're here until 4 o'clock, available for coconut if you want to discuss any, but I'll give the floor to Ángel to
So basically, out of all these 9, what we do see when we talk to different companies, not only Jack, is that people really struggle to define that specific. Yeah, sorry. We'll share the slides later as well for those that didn't see it in the back. We really see companies struggling to define what's the concrete problem for what concrete audience, right? So really trying to, let's say, what we call get their story straight. And in that sense, there's always 3 elements we try and play with. One is the company, do they know what problem they're solving? Do they know the story behind it? And do they know what the solution is, right? What product is going to solve that problem? Now, in all the different companies we coach or talk to, there's always some sort of mismatch, right? They either know exactly what problem they want to tackle, but their product or solution doesn't quite solve it in their head maybe yet, but in reality it doesn't. Or they have a most amazing product solution, but they're searching to see what problem they need to solve. Or they kind of have both. They know what problem they want to solve, they have a solution, but they're really struggling on getting the story that connects with their audience, right? So in any of those, the struggle is to find to alignment because it can get really complex really fast. So in the case of Jack, if I go back to Maja's story, Jack's story is really simple. The story that caught his attention is, hey, there's a lot of people out there that want to eat less meat, but the reality is it's hard to give up meat, especially for meat, right? The ones that are already sold are already eating less meat, but the majority are really struggling with it. So if you dig deeper into it, because like Maja said, there's a lot of meat alternatives out there, what is really the problem? It's not a lack of alternatives. So then you hone in on it and say, okay, so the problem is there's nothing that checks all the boxes, which is really hard to do. And that's where you say, can I really make a product that is going to compete with other products and really stand out and make a difference to solve the problem? In the case of Jack, it's a really simple solution. It's, okay, well, I'm going to take myself and I'm going to turn myself into delicious, all-time favorite meat dishes. Very important, the all-time favorite meat dishes, because not making really good vegan dishes or vegetarian because they're already sold, right? They already know their way around. But you do want to make something that solves the problem. And that's why we focus mainly on meat alternatives. All right, let's say really famous meat dishes. Now, it might seem simple that's the story, and it took a lot of months, if not years, to come to that and really fine-tune it, because there's a lot of, let's say, obstacles along the way, right? Because everybody has their own, like Maja said, not only outside, but also inside the company, people have their different take on jackfruit, right? So jackfruit, we can make a story around how, you know, it's a natural ingredient, the health factors, and you know, you can dedicate a whole brand on that. Or sustainability issues, right? How it's a smart crop, how the trees don't need water or pesticides. You can also make a whole brand on that. But at the end, making the choice of what's your leading message, what's your leading story to tackle the problem you see, even though it's a really painful decision, it's what helps you differentiate. And in our case, the decision was, hey, it's a meat replacement for chefs because it has the right taste and texture. Now the chefs part, I'm going to explain it a bit because that's actually another complexity to finding your story. And that is our brand audience is the meat lovers, right? That's who we want to end up reaching. But you know, whether you like it or not, it's very unlikely that they're going to be looking for you because at the end they like meat and they're not very likely to be looking for to replace it. So you work backwards. You said, okay, so how would we reach it? You said, well, the logical way is to find a girlfriend or the boyfriend or the friends or the family that would like our products and introduce it to the meat lovers. Oh, you're going to love this. You know, I know you don't like vegan or vegetarian food, but you're going to like this one. Then it's, okay, but those have so many options out there and so many alternatives. How do you reach them? So we're like, okay, the way to reach them is by addressing chefs. Now, everybody likes to go out to eat in restaurants. And chefs are struggling because there's a whole big plant-based, let's say, trend that people are looking to eat more plant-based products. So they're struggling to find ingredients to make their dishes as good with plant-based ingredients. So we're like, okay, well, we can be a product so they satisfy and surprise their guests. And now the reality there, again, you have another hurdle. Even though you have that story now, you're like, okay, but it's too hard to reach every single one individually. So then you have to make a story for how do you get to chefs. In our case, it's wholesalers, right? And the story for wholesalers is like, look, your customers are struggling with this. Put this on your shelves, and we guarantee it's going to fly off because they're gonna be happy with it. They're going to make their clients happy, and they're going to keep coming back for more. Right? So that's from a very simple story. It has a lot of sub stories in it, and that one we have pretty nailed down. The wholesalers to meat lovers. And now our next challenge, especially, got accelerated. It was already on the roadmap, but it got accelerated with the whole Corona restaurant shutting down. We're like, okay, now we have to make that story and work it out for retailers, right? How do you reach meat lovers through retail. And that's why we're now bringing out, let's say, our retail product portfolio to try and reach vegans, to then get introduced to meat lovers. So at the end of the main take-home message I want to get with this is it's just really important to prioritize your message, right? In our case, we have products for lots of different things, and we can choose whatever we want. But just simplified, you have the meat lover, and we want to reach the vegans that are going to convince them that jackfruit is amazing. Then we want to reach the chefs who want to surprise vegans or meat lovers with amazing dishes. And we want to, before that, reach wholesalers to be able to reach the chefs, right? And that's all. Keeping that in order is very important, because if you start focusing on too many different messages like sustainability or healthiness, it starts becoming too confusing, because people like Maja can only memorize or keep in mind so many things. And at the end, the hard part is taking all this messaging and simplifying it into a very simple message. So, for example, hi, I'm Jack. I want to help meat lovers eat less meat. And that'd be it. That's the story.
Yeah. Woo.
Questions about Jack or anybody here that wants to share something about their products or their service?
Okay, I'll bring the microphone. You guys can share one, okay? I'll bring the microphone for questions.
Hi, I'm Alison. Yeah, you make it sound like it was quite a simple set of circumstances that got you to this sort of tagline or point that you're making. In reality, how much arguing was there and how long did it take to get to that?
Oh no, let me go back to the slide with lessons learned. Especially, let me just read out for the ones that can't see the number 9. It's called near burnout is part of the deal. A lot of hours, countless of hours, but it's worth it. I mean, in the end, we truly love the product and we really enjoy working with the team. That said, we have a healthy relationship in which we are not afraid to disagree until we reach an agreement that we can all work with. It took a lot of sessions. Yes, because it's hard to kill your darlings. And we have, of course, blogs that talk about all of these other things that we're not putting up front, but we have to keep each other in check that they are not taking over a primarily marketing message, and that we keep layering them in the order that has been chosen.
And does anyone have a question? I actually do have a question. So let's say you have a product that does have a nice story. It's solving a solution. It's solving a problem, sorry. So it's a solution to a problem. How do you go from there? Because you have your story, but then how do you tell the story? Like, what are the strategies to actually move forward from there?
So just the question is basically on the marketing strategy, or
Yeah, like on the marketing. Yes, on the marketing strategy. Like, so okay, so you got these, and then that would be my question. Then what do you recommend for people to? What is the next step that you recommend people to take on this journey?
I mean, I would love to also pass on the microphone to Ángel, because I'm sure you're going to have a different answer, and that's also what makes this duo a charming one. We often disagree as well, which in the end, ends up being a great scenario that keeps the best of the both worlds. 2 things to your question. One is it's really hard to summarize in one sentence. Sorry. Two reactions. It's really hard to summarize that in one sentence, but I would love to have a proper discussion, or let's say more interactive workshop with anybody who's interested in doing that in more in-depth, because that's a big question. But to put it very simply is, I would say, try to verify that it's true. Test it first. You might be convinced that you have the solution to a certain problem, but the very first step in creating an actual marketing strategy is making sure that other people agree with you. So testing would be my first step, and after that, it's a very complicated, long discussion would love to have.
Yeah, for me, mine is really about focusing on the story first and getting it out, and then executing. Maybe I'm an engineer, but I really like first building something and then figuring out, let's say, how to get it out there. Like you're saying, I see a problem, you want to make a solution. At the end, it's iterations, right? If you have a problem, you have a solution, there's always a story, right? There cannot be a story. So you start with a story, and that's your hypothesis. And it is important to get out there, right? And depending whether you're talking and you hear crickets, or people are like, oh yeah, that's so true. Then you gradually tweak your story into what it becomes. So for example, and going back to your question, me, Jack didn't start on with a story. We started off with a lot of things, but we gradually honed it into, okay, so this is the problem, right? And this is the solution, and this is the story. For example, at first we approached lots of managers of restaurants, right? Who at the end could care less about what was sold in the menu. The ones that made decisions were the chefs, because it was their dishes. So based on that, you gradually find your story until you get it to the strength where people always react, not always, but people start reacting to it.
That's really good. Thank you.
And also, just to add to that, we have started with communicating too many things at the same time. But at some point, when you really listen and you have the willingness to kill your darling, you understand the chef is telling you, sweetie, I just don't care that you're saving trees, or like whatever, with a lot of things that you're telling me. What's the taste like? Like what's the texture like? So you hone in on what you're willing to hear that your customers really want.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, please. I'll just pass the light.
Let's just comment real quick. I love how you personified the jackfruit because it's an unattractive food, and you made it, something very likable. I was just curious because it didn't hit me until I was sitting here. How many people get the meat pun, like the meat jack? I didn't get it at first until I was sitting here. Do you find that it's later on that people go, oh, meat?
Well, we're happy either way. We're happy either if you got that part of the joke, or if you just actually read it as, we would like to introduce you to Jack. It's a food for meat lovers. I mean, in the end, like I said, there's this overlap, and there's so many other things that people will conclude, and you can project a lot of messages, and that's one of them that we think we're projecting, but we also are at peace with the fact that that's not going to land because it's a far-fetched one. So it's yeah. We're always happy when somebody like, oh, that's funky.
So I have a question about because there's this, I think, this ongoing debate, and our family was actually vegan for 10 years, pretty purist, and then we came to Bali, and it's a long story why we gave up being vegan, and we want to go back to being it, so I'm not at all opposed to it. But it's this, I find that it's an interesting discussion that sometimes we're trying to create these meat alternatives. And I think I jokingly put it in the newsletter last week or the week before that vegan steak is not as good as a real steak. Let's give it up. And then I also said, but vegans are healthier than, so it's like sort of let the truth sit in the truth. And so, with this, what I always find interesting is like there's some people who believe like, why are we trying to get people to have meat alternatives? And usually it's the argument because it's a bridge food, right? But why don't you just take a position of like, forget about the meat and just it's food on its own. And here's an interesting way of doing it. And I think it's in the States, it's really played out interesting with, is it Impossible or Impossible Meats or Impossible Burgers that are now in Burger King, and people can't even tell the difference between the real meat and the alternative meat and stuff like that, right? And so I'm curious how you guys fell on your side about how you wanted to approach like delivering this alternative meat thing.
Yeah. So there are two questions in there, right? One
three.
is
sorry. I'm not very good at speaking, so sorry, I talk too much.
At no time do we preach that vegan is the way to go, which is actually interesting. We hope that we didn't here as well, because our team is not vegan, actually. There are meat lovers in our team. There are some people that are vegan in our team, but not all. And there are some diehard meat lovers. We, however, see that people have their different reasons for eating less meat. Perhaps not turning vegan fully, but at least eating less meat. And there are either on the environmental level, animal welfare, right, or the health, personal health. Whatever your reason is, Me Jack brand is addressing a need to eat less, but it's not a challenger brand, which is going against a lot of intuition of some of us in the team because we were born to be challenger brands, so we're suppressing that. But Jack isn't a challenger brand. Oatly is. We love and respect Oatly. We're not. We're not judging. We're never saying this is the way to go. We're simply saying, if you want to cut down, try this product. And the reason we chose the meat alternative, meat replacement, and to profile Jack as replacing meat is because we thought that is the easiest, the best way to get the attention of the one that is trying to eat less meat. Because otherwise, if we don't, and if we give them the podium of being, a versatile ingredient to create a lot of beautiful vegan dishes, then we're targeting a different group, which is vegans and vegetarians looking for one more ingredient that they can use in their kitchen in Europe, where it's not a common thing. Here it is, there it's not. But your target audience becomes a different one. And therefore, you're not solving the original problem that we started with, which is help people eat less meat. Then you're actually targeting a whole different group by offering one more nice ingredient they probably know, but they just don't have available in their supermarket and in their immediate, local market the way that it's available here.
To jump on one more thing, because I completely agree with that. Because the whole food industry and meat alternatives, actually, she dragged me into it. Like before her, like I was always on meat and Spanish. I love it, and I never really got why people label their products as meat alternatives. I'm like, well, if it's that good, just call it jackfruit, right, or whatever it is. But the reality is that there is a problem, and you're trying to position yourself to be seen, right? And hey, I can solve that problem. And even though ideally you would launch a product and people will immediately see it, you first have to introduce yourself, and nobody's going to find you if they're not looking for you. So people are looking for meat alternatives, right? It's very big. The wave is coming. So the reason you position yourself as a meat alternative is because that's what people are looking for. Ideally, though, in the long run, people get to know your product and you gradually evolve. And it's just, hey, this is an amazing ingredient to make great dishes.
And can I say something else? I mean, have you ever taken the jackfruit curry here? It just looks like meat. I mean, the first time I ate it here, I was like, are you sure this is not chicken? So jackfruit is specific, has this texture that reminds meat, so.
Actually,
it's one of his unique selling points.
Yes, it's one of the selling points, yeah.
We have videos back in Holland. It's a big festival country. Everybody goes out, music festivals, and we have videos of just in festivals of people eating it, and they're like, "Hey, what is this? Is this shawarma?" Like they really can't. They think it's meat. They know it's meat. They're sure of it, but they can't specify what meat it is. And then when they hear it's a fruit, they're like, "Okay."
Yeah.
We have it on YouTube to do it.
Does anyone have any other questions? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I love your story. It's always really complicated to make a message simple. And I was just wondering a bit more about how successful is the story. So can you tell something about the product placement and actually how the whole product is going? I mean, are you already selling it? How does the marketing go? Where do you sell it? How are people perceiving it? Can you tell something more about the next steps, so to say, in this area?
I'll hand you over to. He's our numbers guy and operations guy, but just from my perspective, we started selling in 2019, halfway through 2019. And we started going mainly to chefs directly, although where we really wanted to be is wholesalers. But we understood that to be in the wholesalers, we have to be requested by chefs. So we invested a lot of time and effort into actually manually, approaching restaurants, walking in, until we created a group of like 50 clients that were willing to buy from us directly, although that's not a procedure in Holland. You don't buy directly, you go to the wholesaler. Now, having initial customers of about 50, then we were better positioned to say to wholesalers, like, we can continue delivering directly, but can you now consider putting us on the shelves? So that happened towards the first one started to come in towards 2019, end of 2019. In the 2020, in the first 2 months prior to the outbreak of famous pandemic, our sales was 3 times as much as the previous year. Direct sales, plus we were in 2 out of 6 biggest wholesalers in Holland. The rest came in the months to follow. So our product's now available in the biggest wholesalers, with over 50 restaurants that we know of buying us, and how many go directly, we don't quite know. That said, Corona happened, so a lot of orders are canceled, and that forced us to speed up our shift to retail 2 years prior to what we thought we would do. We gave ourselves 2 years time to first consolidate our position in the B2B market before shipping.
So are you in retail now or not yet?
Small ones.
Small ones. Yeah, so pretty much if it's tackled a different way. So the company was running for 2 years, right? The first year is just like, hey, let's try it, a couple clients. And then the second year, it was really a push to get known and really knocking on doors. And then right when, like Maja said, in the first month, we pretty much did the sales of the previous year. But then in March, Corona hit, right? But we let's say it didn't kill us the first wave, because we did see immediately because there's 2 lockdowns in Holland. One was from March to May, June. Immediately when the lockdown was open, like we went back to the original numbers and even grew a bit, right? But then in November, lockdown again. But that gave us enough, let's say, of a story to build a good story on, hey, the potential of the product and find investors. We didn't go around it the right way, like the typical way. We didn't go for capital investment. We looked for partners that were loved our brands, and we have a jackfruit provider and a jackfruit producer. So we balanced our costs like that to survive the second lockdown. And we do see, because the lockdown's about to open in Holland. I think actually this terrace is open last month. So you do see immediately the numbers go up again. And so we are hoping that it's going to grow and continue the curve from before. I think the simple answer is because we live there. let's say Kalina and Martin were here. That's why they came up with the story, and they're originally based in the Netherlands. And what they did come in Holland, there's a very popular product called the bitterbal, which is like where are you from? Okay, there you go. So the bitterbal is surprisingly easily to imitate with jackfruit. You can really, it's even better. It's like a bit creamier, lighter, but it still gives a sense of a bitterbal. You can barely taste the difference. So it's such an easy product to replicate that it just made logical that that's the first product. And from there we went to the croquettes, right? And there you went to the next big popular thing, which is gyros. And then the next big product that really matches is a rendang, right? It's like Indonesia. And those products are all really big hits. Like you notice when restaurants are open, ordering, and the challenge we have now is making that for retail. Because those are very easy to make in volumes for restaurants to use and sell. But for consumers, they look for something else. They go more for like burgers or the meatballs or the Thai curry, I heard somebody say, right? And those are the products we're developing, we've developed now. And we're slowly, like Maja said, starting to sell in small retailers. And with the traction, convince the bigger retailers that, hey, you should give us a space on your shelf.
Where do you do packaging and everything? Is that done here and shipped, or do you ship the jackfruit to Holland and do it there?
I'll answer that question just to say why Holland. Yes, apart from the practical reason, we actually just read a study from ING that estimates the plant-based meat market at 7.5 billion in 2025, with a steady growth of 10%. And apparently, out of all countries, Dutch people eat by far the most meat replacement from everybody else. So had we actually consciously chosen, it might still be Holland. How do we go about packages? Raw jackfruit arrives from Thailand and Sri Lanka in chunks and in stripes. It's fresh frozen product, so we don't do any processing. It's blanched, it's put in a glass freezer for a few seconds, comes out to -18 degrees in bags. That is the product that we either sell to chefs who want the raw product, or usually about half of the shipment we use to turn into the products you have seen. The packaging happens in Holland, and the production of those products also happens in Holland.
So there's no jackfruit coming out of Indonesia?
The jackfruit, yeah. So we take the jackfruit. Oh no, not Indonesia. No. The idea started here.
Yeah.
But there's
Why is that?
the idea started here, but in Bali, but there's no farms big enough to handle the production, right? So then you start looking, and we talked to actually a big meat supplier in Europe, and they really saw the whole plant-based trend coming on early, so they decided based on our story to start importing jackfruit. So they did the research for us. They looked, and the best places to import from was Thailand and Sri Lanka, and that's so they help us import it, and then we take over with the jackfruit in Holland. We take over to turn it into consumer-ready products.
We eat all the jackfruit here, please. There's no leftover.
You eat the jackfruit.
You don't?
I like it in Sage. I like their jackfruit tacos. Those are good.
You see, you eat jackfruit.
Has anybody here not had jackfruit? Not.
Ooh, this is
No?
the first room ever.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Most
Yeah.
people.
Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, guys. That was such a big pleasure. It was so great to have you guys here. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing with Jack's story, and thank you for being here, sharing with us. Next.